Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Ask Ed, and I've got Ed Smith here on a beautiful morning to say hi.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, it's cool today. Today is maybe Tuesday, and I think it may be 80 degrees today instead of 100. So
Nice.
It's a nice day today. Just talk about something.
We're always in a good mood.
See what kind of good questions we have today, and we'll try to get some good answers here.
All right. Well, you never know what people are going to ask a question. It's really fun.
That's what's fun about it.
That's right. And I have a couple questions I'm going to try to remember that I didn't write down, but I had some questions for you too anyway.
Okay.
All right. So thank you for your questions. All you have to do is put the question in the comments, and we will try to track it down and keep track of it. This question is from Rick, and he is talking about the Quadrajets. He's talking about adjusting. There's an air door adjustment, he says, on the back passenger side on the top. It has a small flat screwdriver screw to set the air door adjustment with an Allen wrench set screw. Okay, now he's giving his advice, but we'll see what you think about it.
Right. Okay.
He says, do not, in all caps, tighten the secondary air door spring more than one turn from neutral. It will be junk. Is it possible to ruin a carburetor by over tightening?
I don't know. Basically, if you tighten it up, that secondary valve won't open then. It's really a big delay.
Oh.
And it's so big a port there that the secondaries are huge ports.
Yeah.
Huge things. And then once you open those up, then you create very little vacuum.
Okay.
It's too big. It's like some of the old carburetors we used to have that we got into Bill Jenkins at that time with that 4500 carburetor.
Right.
On it, and it pulled so much air that they took the jets out of the carburetor and ran better. Because there was no air suction in there. I think the same with this Quadrajet. There's no suction to open that flap.
Oh.
So if you tighten that spring on there a little bit, it just throws the whole thing off. Now, I don't think you'd want to open it any quicker either, because it's opened by the secondaries. When they open, the draft air going through that secondary valve is what actually triggers that to be open progressively.
Oh.
Instead of just progressively, instead of slamming open.
Yeah.
Then you have a big bog because you're way too rich.
Oh.
So that carburetor's got a lot of little things on it.
And this goes back to why some people called it quadra junk, because they didn't know what they were doing.
They didn't know what they were doing, and they started adjusting, tinkeritis again.
Yeah, right.
We hear that word in carburation.
Okay.
So he knows what he's doing there with that carburetor.
Yes, and thank you. He calls himself Racer Rick. I don't know a lot about you, Rick, but you make a lot of great comments.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, appreciate the comment.
That's very good. Next one is from Paul. He said, Ed, what do you think about the old straight sixes in sprint cars in the 60s? I think you know something about those straights.
A little bit, yeah. We had the Hudson, and that was a dual carburetor motor, twin Hornet or something like that, with two carburetors on it. And my neighbor guy, when I was a young kid, had a Hudson. Okay. And I had a bigger Hudson, not necessarily the little mini Hudson, but a big car. And he ran quite well with that car. It was heavy, almost as big as a 49 Mercury.
Right.
God, and had that Hudson motor in it and stuff, and they ran good.
Why did I think those were eights? Those were six?
Straight six-cylinder, straight six. I suppose today it'd be really hard to get parts for them and things. Yeah. Why somebody would want to do that today.
What about
I seen something on the internet the other day. A guy pictured that motor with the air cleaners and the carburetors on one side, and then it had a kind of a tin spout that went over, and actually the filter part of it was on the opposite side of the motor as the carburetor.
Okay. What about those Falcons you had in the 60s?
Well, the Falcon, that was a different motor. That was we raced that in 1970s and stuff, and we got a lot of horsepower out of all those motors, a 170, 144.
Was it a 240, was there? No.
Yeah. And no, we didn't race the 240. That was the 300 class.
Oh, okay.
It was the 300 motors. But we raced that 170 and the 200.
Okay.
Yeah.
And those are also straight sixes, right?
Straight six, yeah. But overhead valve. Yeah.
Okay. And you did well nutted. Okay, so that's Mopar and Ford. Did the General Motors have any six cylinders in those classes?
Not really. They didn't have the old six cylinder. The 235 couldn't get much horsepower out of them.
Right.
But now you see them on lowriders have them a little bit. They put a couple carburetors on and a set of headers, and get a little bit of horsepower out of them. Yeah.
Okay.
but I don't think I ever seen him racing them or anything that I know of.
Okay.
Yeah.
But was it enjoyable to use back in the 60s, let's say? Was that enjoyable, the sprint cars back then with those 6 cylinders?
Not so much, no.
Okay.
Actually, the sprint car, it's a sprint car, got bigger, wider tires on the back, and they actually went in the Ford Flatheads, and they could run alcohol and nitromethane on sometimes. And then they had the Offenhauser motor and Drake motors, and they put a lot of, that was a 4-cylinder motor.
Oh,
and they put a lot of horsepower there. It was hard to be competitive with them.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, and so
that's interesting.
It was kind of interesting, yeah, what the whole phase of that went through.
Yeah.
Up until the new cars now, and I'm going to build a sprint car motor here for a guy who was in here just the other day, and it's going to be a really nice motor. But the bottom motor with the crank was broke, and that's not uncommon.
Okay.
Because again, we've had some of those in the dirt track when the tires are and the slide gets slick and gets wet and gets sticky.
Yep.
That the tires spin and they don't, and the spin and they don't come off the corner, and the motor will rev and catch traction and just twist everything.
Okay. Yeah. So that motor, instant traction would just snap on it, huh?
And then it spins the tires and don't.
Right.
So the motor quite flexes back and forth, and that will break the crank or break anything in there.
Yeah. And
this guy bought a motor. He was there just the other day, and he's got another block and stuff, and we're going to put a lot of the other stuff back on the block.
Okay.
Work the crank in half, yeah.
Interesting.
That'd be interesting to do that motor, yeah.
Well, we'll have to get some photos of that.
Well, we'll look at that motor when we get it in. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Good deal. Good deal. All right, so here's a random question from Joseph. He says, ask Ed about Bill Cheesbourg fries in Tucson. Do you know any of the Tucson guys?
Oh, he used to come up here all the time to race. Of course, he was competitive.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I think his son-in-law, we knew him a little bit. I think it was I know it was his son-in-law, grandson maybe. Maybe his grandson come up here to one of the high schools over here and taught high school automotive.
Oh.
My nephew was in his class.
Huh.
And I think my nephew was maybe a junior, freshman, sophomore, somewhere in a high school.
Interesting.
And, so we knew that Cheesebourg's, whatever it was, grandson knew a lot about motors. And so I used to send my nephew with a question.
Okay.
It was a tricky question to get him to answer it. And usually the answer was totally not true at all. So we used to laugh. And then he always asked him, the teacher would ask him, well, where'd you get that question from? He said, well, my uncle. He says, oh, well, forget that then.
Yeah, right. That's not fair.
Yeah, that's not fair, yeah. But Cheesbourg was good. He was an older guy. He's older than I am, I think.
Okay.
I don't know when he passed away. I'm sure he had, but he was competitive.
Okay. Yeah. So there you go. So I bet you have some stories may come up from time to time.
Yeah, it
with those
might be
guys.
from time to time. Yeah, it was fun.
The next one's from Tom. He says, why are the heads on that 409 built that way? Now, you got to pretend you're an engineer at General Motors doing the W engine. The Chevy 409, was there a thought of what the advantage would be of that wedgy
I really don't know.
Okay.
I'd never talked to an engineer or talked to anybody, and I don't think any of the 409 racers ever questioned that or anything, what the benefit was from it. And I remember then they come out with that mystery motor, 427, the first 427 motors, or the 396 phase motor, 396, 427, 454 motor. They had a mystery motor in there somewhere that the bottom end was more 396, and the top end was 409 stuff.
Oh, really? Yeah. Okay, I was always wondering how that.
Yeah, and it had a weird intake manifold on it and stuff, and so it was really a strange motor. But I don't know what the original thoughts were from any kind of engineering, how much horsepower they got to do or whatever.
Yeah,
but it really didn't last that long.
No, it was just a few years, wasn't it?
Just a few years, yeah.
Big One says, I love your channel. Would you ask Ed about when you're setting the lash on a small block Chevy hydraulic flat tappet cam on break-in, would it be best or not to go a quarter or maybe even a half to lessen the pressure on the cam during break-in?
The valve springs don't have the same pressure.
Okay.
It's the valve springs, it's the pressure.
Okay. So how you're torquing it down wouldn't matter?
Doesn't matter at all. I think when we assemble a motor over here, now they give it maybe a half a turn from zero lash. And actually anywhere in that oil, I think you can go about 4 turns.
Okay.
So sometimes I like to run them a little tighter than that, so I may give it a whole turn or turn and a half.
Oh.
But just so you got a little play there. And I think from that time, you don't have as much oil cushion in there. And the oil cushion is a good time that the valve won't open. It has that cushion. Anytime you got a cushion, it's not direct.
Yes.
It has to overcome the cushion.
Yeah.
Your valve lifter every time it runs. So I think if you tighten them up a little bit down to almost 0 lash and back them off a half a turn, you'd be close to 0 and it would start better.
Okay.
And probably run a few more RPMs too.
Okay. Now, would you do anything different? Would you break an engine in differently and then adjust it again after it's broken in?
Not really.
Okay.
No, it's the same pressure.
Yep.
Because it's the valve spring, it's the pressure and the weight of the rocker arm and push rod and all that same all measures into how much it takes to lift that valve, lift the lifter off the camshaft.
Okay. He said some engine builders will epoxy a screen material over the oil drainback holes in the lifter valley. That way, if the valve train goes, and I hope it doesn't, but maybe it will, it'll stay in the valley and not go anywhere else.
Yeah, you can buy those kits. You can buy a kit from somebody, I don't know what it is, but it's a cardboard with all those screens the same size.
Huh.
Screen them in there, or you can make your own too.
What do you think about oil filters? We haven't really talked about oil filters.
We haven't talked about how much. Again, I've had some trouble with Preload filters.
Okay.
And one time, one came apart on a truck that had been maybe 500 miles on it, and the valve came out of the bottom of the oil filter.
Oh, wow.
There's a valve down there that separates the oil from the filter and the volume going in and out the valve.
Yep.
The valve came loose and was stuck up in there and started the whole motor.
Oh.
The whole motor ran dry.
Oh.
And the motor had about 500 miles on it. And we tried to get a hold of Preload people, and I spent a couple of months. I had that filter laying up behind my desk for a long time just to remind me.
Wow.
And I couldn't get any results from them at all. Couldn't get a hold of anybody that owned the thing. And I think some taillight company had bought it.
Oh, wow.
Or something like this. And we like the Wix filters. We've never had any trouble with them, and we run those exclusive on our cars, our race cars. And some of the, I don't know which filters are made by who either. And the same way with the longer filter, sure, longer filter, you don't want a little short filter.
Right.
And sometimes on the Nova, we had, yesterday one of my friends came in with a Nova motor, and the little early ones that they had a different block, and the block was casted up in the block. The filter area was up about 2 inches up in the block. Totally different than any other Chevy block.
Really?
So it'd take a regular filter, but if you put a 350 motor in that thing, you use a short filter.
Yeah.
I think the short filter came available in a Nova 4-cylinder car. Just had a little short filter about 4 inches long.
Yeah.
And some of the Chevrolets then, some of the Chevrolet trucks with the old can filter had a can that long.
Oh, wow.
Maybe about a 8-inch can with a big long filter in it. It was all good. It was a commercial trucks had those long filters.
Sure, yeah.
If we were worried about that or consistent, just depends on what you're doing with it, we have some aluminum adapters that uses 2 filters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have a aluminum thing that mounts on the firewall, and you can actually put two filters on it.
No kidding. All right.
It's all good. Just give a good filter, a good brand name filter in the first place.
Okay, another question. When you gap the rings, do you torque plate the block and measure that way, or what gives you realistically shape on the cylinder on startup? I guess, that somehow measuring for your rings, you have a lot of experience. You probably don't have to do a lot of measuring when you're building an engine you often build.
Well, if you torque plate it, basically when you torque plate an engine, you just want to make sure the cylinders are all equal and all the same.
Okay.
That's why you torque plate. When you hone it with the torque plate on it, then they're almost perfect.
Right.
As being round.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so there's no movement or...
No movement or something like that. That stresses the motor, puts a stress on it.
I see.
And we've talked about that with the other motors and stuff, but that's what you do. And then you go back to the secondary thing is to gap the rings.
Right.
And I think if you was to gap the rings in there, we have some things about ring gap, and I think it's not important, ring gap. And I've talked to some ring people and manufacturers and stuff, and they have all kinds of different things. And again, we'll go back to Total Seal on the ring gaps and particular ones that they have particular things, but some of their motors too, they're a cold motor. On total seals like the top fuel cars, they're cold. You start them up, warm them up a little bit, and then that ring gap changes.
Sure.
I'm sure at the end of the thing going 330 miles an hour, that ring gap is really tight.
Yeah.
It must get hot.
Yeah.
Of course it does. You get that from the results at the end of it. When you tear it apart, every time you make a run there, at 330, you take all the pistons out and look at them.
Yeah.
If they have a little scuffing on the rings, make the gap a little wider.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of trial and error for those things.
Oh, it's totally trial and error. And they don't tell nobody.
Right.
Don't tell your competition that.
No.
But even though on a regular motor that we're talking about, the difference between gap in the ring 23 and 25 is very, very little.
Okay.
It's just, and where it gets hot and stuff, with expansion of the ring it's unmeasurable almost.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's each to his own. Again, we have ours, and we have a variance in there. You can't. It's so easy when you're gapping rings, and our motors, you're gapping them, and you gap it a little bit too much. Maybe instead you're looking for 24 and you get 26, it's no big deal.
Right. Right.
Yeah, we would not throw that ring away and start over.
No, it's going to be fine.
Yeah, it could be the same. If it was up to 28, it's the same thing. Just only they don't touch. The main thing is the ring gap don't touch.
Right. Okay.
Of all, totally. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't do that.
All right. All right. We have another regular viewer here that he's going, we're talking about gapping. I'm sorry. Forrest Manuel here is asking about when you're adjusting your carburetor for the high altitude and the low altitudes. You even mentioned building an engine just to go race in Denver one time. I remember that.
Yeah.
He said, okay, so if it's a less density, higher altitude place,
yeah,
do you add or subtract? Are you jetting up or down for that?
Yeah, no air, you need no gas.
Okay.
Air-fuel ratio is always the same.
So it's always the ratio.
Yeah, it's a ratio that you're looking for. Yeah.
What oxygen's out there. So you can use bigger jets when you're near sea level.
Yes, right.
And then you have to have smaller jets.
Yeah. One time I was in Colorado, and we go up there. We used to go a lot, many, many years, spend a lot of time in Colorado. And we stopped someplace, and our Bronco, it was always ran good because we know what we were doing.
Yeah.
And there was a couple of motorcycle guys there, and I always stop and talk to them, little dirt bikes. And he says, well, what are you doing here? He says, we can't go any further. He says, look at the guy on the red motorcycle. He had a red shirt on. He was way up on the top of the mountain. He says, he's rejetted his motorcycle 4 times today.
Okay.
He's rejetted his motorcycle, and that's why he's curled up on the side of the mountain. We can't go up there because we don't want to take the carburetor apart.
Okay.
So that's a 1-cylinder motor, I'm sure it was.
Yeah, right.
Kawasaki 450 or something. But
yeah, right.
He rejected his carburetor 4 times today already, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And we don't think about that much, and we're already way up in the mountains.
Wow.
The same way I said something about one time we were in Orange County, and we had all the gauges, air density gauges and things like this. We always kept those, and sometimes we told somebody we had them, sometimes we didn't. But that day, I think that night, the fog came rolling in, air density. I think we changed our jets out about 3 times, and we didn't even start the motor up.
Missed this one question. This is from Nicholas, and he says, he's suggesting that if you put 283, not a small block Chevy, 283 push rods in the original 265, that actually changes the compression. Are those longer push rods? Or
wouldn't have anything to do with it.
Nope.
No, it's nothing to do with it at all. Longer push rod or shorter push rod.
Okay.
It's going to travel the same. It's where your adjustment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
what do they do with it?
Sorry, Nicholas.
Same push rod.
Yeah.
From 283, 265 is the same length as 350.
Is that right?
As far as I know.
Yeah. Well, you've probably built a few hundred of them.
Yeah.
Or maybe a few thousand.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
James wants you to talk about the dry sump engines and the pros and cons and what you think about that.
I like dry sump's a particular motor.
Okay.
And that'd be a sprint car or something that you're racing in long races. Mm-hmm. If you have a little oil leak, you got 5 quarts of oil.
Okay.
5 gallons sometimes, or gallons of oil before you run out. It's just more capacity.
Okay.
And it actually, I love the whole thing because the oil goes in the thing and cools off. It mixes with the rest of it. You don't have hot oil. The temperature would probably be maybe 100 degrees less than it would be in a small pan that only has 4 or 5 quarts in it, or even 8 quarts.
Right.
The pan, yeah, it's all good stuff.
There's
more stuff to leak.
Right.
Yeah, the more fittings to leak and hoses to come off and more complicated systems and stuff. You got an outside pump run by sometimes by a front pump, Gilbert belt up in front.
Okay.
And some more stuff to fall off, and when the driver don't know, it's too late. All the systems are good. It's just whatever you choose on your particular application.
Yeah. And if
I wouldn't put a dry sump on driving on the street.
Right.
I would not do that.
Now, isn't there also an advantage for if a lot of G-forces, it keeps oil where it can be sucked up?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sucks oil all the time. Notice when you're in a curve or going straight or stopping or whatever, sudden stops, they downshift and yeah, it's all that.
So the oil's not moving around in the drain pan.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Ray says he's heard that you could take a truck 390 engine and put a car 390 piston on the truck rods, and it would bring the piston to the top of the bore. And I guess it's a matter of how the piston...
Depends on what piston they made the motor in the first place.
Okay.
It's the height of the wristband.
Right.
Yeah, that's to the top of the piston, yes.
Yeah.
So I think in the truck motor, they just put a lower compression piston in it. So it didn't ping and pull and knock and overheat and things in a dump truck. That's all they did, I think. But most of those blocks, they ride on it. 390 passenger car. I mean, excuse me, 352.
Okay.
It's casted right in the motor. 352 passenger, PASS. And that's on a lot of the motors, whether they're 390s or 352s or 428s and all that stuff, yeah.
Right. 428
does say 428 on the motor.
Okay, yeah. But the
height of the piston is just whatever brand of piston you have.
Sure.
Yeah,
okay.
That's what, as far as I'm concerned, that's
yeah.
As far as I know, yeah.
Okay. Mr. Johnny says he's wondering what the cam specs were, and I don't know if we could remember it now.
I don't know. Usually we don't put anything in camshafts that we would run, any kind of a high lift camshaft or anything. We would just put a little bit of an RV, usually somewhere around in the 280-degree duration. Okay. And some of those pistons are 454, I'm sure that's what it was. Yeah. And would have maybe a little dome on, 100 thousandths dome on the piston. Okay. And that would match up to that 280-degree camshaft, 282, 280 something camshaft. I don't think we use or put a 290-degree camshaft in anything lately that I know of. Yeah. What about, he's asking, what would the final compression ratio be on an engine like that? Probably 10.5. About 10.5. 10, yeah, 10 and a quarter, 10.5. So that runs on premium gas, pump gas? Regular gas, it depends on. Or even regular? Yeah, it depends on if you're here in Arizona, you got a nice carburetor on it, so it don't lean out. Yeah. Billy is back on the FE engines, the Ford. Okay. He said on rebuilding the 428 with the 390 or 391 block. So I think we talked about, you mentioned that you could build a 428 from a 390 block. Yeah. Yeah. And that's what he's talking about. Now, do you need to modify the 390 heads is his question. The heads? Yeah. No. Some of them have the GT heads that are different. Mm-hmm. And has more bolt patterns for the special exhaust manifold for Mustang. Oh, right. It's got all the bolts around each exhaust port and stuff. I see. And the ports might be a little bigger. But of course, you can buy the big 427 heads. It's got a big exhaust port and stuff. Mm-hmm. Okay. There's a lot of Ford, but they're all would bolt on there. Yeah. Someone was saying on a small block Windsor Ford, like a 302, let's say, that there's actually a way to have an advantage putting 289 heads on because it's a smaller chamber, so you end up with a higher compression ratio. Does that make sense to do something like that? Sure. Okay. Yeah. Have you done that? And a 351 Windsor, I wouldn't want a higher compression. Okay. Because what we use them for is for off-road. Yeah. On a Bronco or something like this, and I wouldn't want a higher compression in that thing for no reason. But you could start building a race car motor, and we build some of those over here and stroke the 351 Windsor. Then we put aluminum heads on it, and they're particular CCs, and puts out a lot of horsepower. Small block Chevy, or small block Fords, they got a numerous amount of cylinder heads, numerous amount of different ones. So you got a big choice. They may have a 302 block sitting around and 289 heads sitting around, and it's probably not a custom build as much as, hey, I can put this together, would it work? Yeah, it would work. Okay. Yeah, flat top piston is not going to hit anything. All right, next question is from Dwight. And he says, Mr. Smith, he's giving you respect, Mr. Smith. Okay, that's good. That's good. So how do you like liquid propane gas
Do you have much experience doing that?
They run good. You get 25% less horsepower.
Okay.
And you get 25% less gas mileage.
Okay.
And the exhaust pipe turns red hot.
Really? Huh.
So let's talk about a motorhome on propane. You have to keep everything away from it. Any kind of hoses or plastic things away from the tailpipe.
Really?
That's how hot it gets.
Interesting.
So you just change it over to propane and start using it. Expect the same results, or expect any. The only good results is it's cheaper.
Okay.
I knew a farmer that had propane. This Lincoln I talk about once in a while. The old farmer lived. He owned, I think, in the day, he owned half of Arizona.
Okay.
And there's an old doctor lives a bunch. I don't know how many acres he owns. Maybe some 12 miles square.
Yeah.
And some other that's big of properties up here. But anyways, he had the propane in his Lincoln because he bought it for the factory for the tractors.
Oh.
He bought it for 9 cents a gallon or something.
Okay. So
the car ran fine. He didn't. We was just careful with it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's all good. You have to be careful. You don't expect it to be a hot rod.
Right.
And to be all kinds of good things happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think
it ain't going to happen.
And I think some people claim, and maybe it's true, but they claim that it burns cleaner.
Sure, it's cleaner.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cleaner. It gets hotter. Yeah, cleaner.
Okay. Well, I guess the heat cleans it, right? That's part of the deal.
Yeah, it's hot.
Yeah. Okay. That all makes sense. That's very good. This is Ronald. He says, I love learning from Ed Smith about the Harmonics and Grumpy's nylon cam gear. May I ask about exhaust manifolds? I read equal length headers causes harmonics. Is there any truth that you know of from that?
I never seen an equal length header that caused any kind of harmonics.
Okay.
Especially you look at the header people that build them, and one of the things that I am amazed at is the headers on a Formula One car, and they go 10, 12,000 RPMs.
Yeah, right.
And they're a bunch of spaghetti, and I give the guy credit, whoever built them.
You're right.
You know, and they're twisted around and all kinds. They sound so pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just bark. Every cylinder, you can hear every cylinder bark.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any harmonics in that at all.
Right.
It may be some harmonics in an original cast iron manifold.
That's more likely.
It's got to be.
Yeah.
Because you end up with a manifold like a 390 Ford. The manifold is this long, and it's got one end, it's a real skinny little thing, and one end has got a little port in one end.
Right.
So that end has got to relieve the gas easier than the one up in front.
Sure.
It's got to travel, that gas port from leaves the cylinder head, it's got to travel 8 inches back to this little exhaust port where it goes out into the tailpipe. It's got to cause all kinds of problems.
Right. Yeah.
So the worst thing you have on is the exhaust manifold.
Okay.
That's why some of the factory performance and some of the Chrysler products had those big ram horn exhaust manifolds. Spent a lot of money on a big old manifold. It's huge, and they were almost equal length. And dumped it into a great big pipe, 3-inch pipe.
Yeah.
2.5-inch pipe right off the manifold.
They
were doing it for a Pontiac, 421 Pontiac, and a nice set of cast iron exhaust manifolds.
Oh, right.
And, yeah, from the factory, and 63, 64s, yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's a good
390 Ford had one.
Okay.
Big, long manifold. All equal length, as much as they could, and still get and be reasonable.
Yeah.
Awesome, yeah, but
okay.
Yeah, the worst thing you'd have is a little short manifold.
Thank you, Ed, for answering all these questions.
Good questions.
Thanks for being a part of BarryTsGarage. And if you want some Ed Smith memorabilia, some hats and shirts and all, it's just edsmithspeed.shop. Head over there and have a look.